My wife left me. My husband left me. You got people that are in all these situations that are legitimate tribulation. I'm not saying they're not. I'm not trying to take from the impact that these things have on your life. But we always talk about the same things. And we don't recognize the real tribulation that's really affecting people. But let's go back to the Red Sea for example. Somebody says, speak for yourself, dude. Look, I don't have time to sit here and respond to all of these spiritual cowards. I am speaking for all of Christianity. Do I always get it right? No. Do you? No. But it's always a situation where Christians love to attack other Christians who are willing to stand up for God. Do you know that usually when somebody responds to one of my posts in a negative way, the first thing I go do when they tell me I'm wrong or something, the first thing I go do is look at their profile. And do you know that 9 out of 10 times I go to their profile and there's nothing on their profile but crap. Stupid stuff. Nothing to do with God. They got so much to say about my comment about Christ and the Bible and the Word of God. So much to say about that. But listen to me. Whenever somebody starts to castigate you on these platforms and ridicule you and mock you, I'm talking about Christians. People who call themselves Christians. These are the ones who do it to you. I don't mind the atheist and the agnostic. It's the Christians that get on my nerves. The Christians who say nothing, who don't do anything, who don't participate in any ministry at all. The ones who are always saying, oh, I don't need to go to church. I don't need to honor the Lord's Day. You know, these are the people that are always trying to mock you and ridicule you. Christians. But then you go look at their profiles and look what they have. I look at every one of them who starts telling me I'm wrong and this and the other, and I look at what they have to say, and they have nothing to say. I have one guy that always attacks. Always. And I went to him a few times and said, listen, you are so adamant about attacking me. And he believes that hell is not eternal. He believes that every single person that has ever lived will go to heaven without exception. Hell is not a permanent place of eternal condemnation. And when he makes all these statements and whatever, and I said, well, how come on your profile, there's nothing there? There's nothing there. There's no messages. There's no post about the truth. There's no stand you're making for Christ. Nothing. And then I asked him, why don't you do it? You have so much to say to me. You have so much time to write me all these messages to tell me how I'm wrong. Why aren't you witnessing and sharing the gospel on your profile? You know what he tells me? Don't have time. Then how do you find the time to get on mine and write, 5, 6, 10-part messages about why I'm wrong? You have time to do that, but you don't have time to make a post. I know it's much easier for me to post something speaking than it is for me to write a 10-part messages that fills up the maximum amount of type capacity on my profile. So if you're going to talk a lot of mess about me, any of you, if you're going to talk a lot of mess about me or any other Christian, make sure that when they look at your profile, you're saying something godly, that you're sharing the gospel, that you're witnessing, that you're sharing the truth. Otherwise, my recommendation is to be quiet. If you want to be one of those believers like the 7,000 up in the hills, stay up there and hide. You stay up there and hide. Because as long as God gives me the strength, I'm going to be a frontline Christian, and I wish that every one of you the same thing. And there are a lot of you who are. And God bless you all. But even those of you who are not on the front lines, may God bless you as well. But don't come in here telling me I'm wrong about anything if I go to your site or your profile and you say nothing about Christ, Nothing about the gospel. Nothing encouraging to edify God's people. No exhortations that make people go, I never knew that. I always wanted to learn that. I always wanted to do this. You challenged me, this and the other. What are you doing? All of you listening, what are you doing for Christ today? So many people are often writing me, telling me, oh, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And nobody says, you know what, sir? I'm going to pray that God gives me a better understanding of what you're talking about. And in addition to that, I'm going to pray for you. And I'm going to pray that either he corrects me or I'm going to pray that he corrects you. But I want to be in fellowship with you because you're my brother. Now, that would be cool to hear once in a while. And I get that. And I get that from a lot of people. So excuse me while I go off on my tangent for a little while. I had to do that. Like I said, I have a wide open day and I'm just in the mood. I'm in the mood to edify, to build up, and to do it. And I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but I'm in the mood. And so I'm going to talk as long as God gives me the grace to do so. I am 60 years old, and I plan on doing just what I'm doing at this moment till the day I die. And so far, it's been 42 years. And if God gives me another 20 years, 30 years, whatever, I'm going to continue to do it. And I don't care who likes it or not. And I hope you feel the same way. Now, let's go back to this tribulation subject. Tribulation has been something that has been going on ever since the beginning of time. You don't believe me? When you get to heaven, ask Abel. Ask Abel if he experienced tribulation. In fact, ask Adam and Eve. Ask Isaac. Ask Abraham. Ask David. When Saul was chasing him, trying to kill him. Ask Noah. Ask Lot. Ask Daniel. Ask Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. Go ask Ruth, Rahab, Tamar. Go ask Elijah. Go ask Elisha. Go ask Esther, like my sister says. Go ask Mordecai. Go ask Nahum. Go ask Jonah. Go ask Moses. You're going to even tell me there's no tribulation? Listen. And here's the worst part about tribulation. Here's the worst part about Christians and their interpretation today about tribulation. They tell you this. Not only is tribulation going to be for 7 years, not only is it going to be great tribulation, but it's going to happen after God takes you out. If there is no other reason to disbelieve this silly notion of a future 7-year tribulation period, if there's no other reason, then it should be for this. The idea that tribulation was meant for you to escape is totally foreign to the Bible. Where in biblical history do you ever see God taking people out of tribulation rather than preserving them in the middle of it? God carries us through tribulation. He preserves us through tribulation. He doesn't cause us to escape it. He saves us in it. We escape tribulation, but we escape it in the midst of it. When Moses was here, God told Moses, I'm going to send you to Pharaoh. Now, you got to imagine what must have been going through Moses' mind. He's probably thinking, Lord, what are you talking about? You know what that guy does. You want me to go to Pharaoh? You, a Jew? This is the man who enslaves my people, the people that worship you. Now you want to send me, your servant, to Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, evil, wicked man. Nevertheless, Moses had faith in the Lord, and he went. And here's the crazy thing. God told Moses, not only am I going to send you to Pharaoh, but he's going to reject everything you say. He's not going to take it. He's not going to like it. He's going to get angry. God told Moses, you're going to Pharaoh. That's where you're going. That's what I'm called you to do. That's what you're going to do. Moses must have been thinking, wait a minute. This guy is oppressing my people, and you're going to send me to Pharaoh. And on top of that, you want me to provoke him to anger? You want me to arouse his anger on top of the hatred that he already has for my people? You want me to go there and to poke the bear. You want me to go grab the dragon by the tail. And on top of that, you're telling me not only am I going to make him mad, but that you are going to harden his already hardened heart. Moses is going like, wait a minute. What are you talking about, Lord? You want me to go and poke the bear? You see what he does to my people. You see how he oppresses us. You see what his enslavement practices are. And you want me to go? And God was like, are you finished? Are you finished? And Moses was a meek man. And he obeyed his Lord, as we should. And he went and he confronted Pharaoh as God directed him to do so. And after a series of 10 plagues, God finally broke for his people the rule and the oppression that Pharaoh held over the Israelites. And then what did he do? He finally got to the point where he let the people go. I'm not going through all the 10 plagues. I'm actually working on a whole message about the 10 plagues. So I'm going to do something on Exodus later, some other day, soon. So I'm not going to go through that now. But 10 plagues. The last one ended up being wiping out the firstborn of all of the people of Egypt and all of the firstborn of all the animals in Egypt. So whatever was born first that was alive, everything died that was the firstborn. Pharaoh, hands over his head, let the people go. They leave. There was a series of interactions between Moses and Pharaoh after that. But it ultimately led to them going toward the Red Sea. God led his people toward the Red Sea. And then the people start complaining to Moses. Now, this is all tribulation. So they are in this desert and they're heading toward, or not yet, but they're heading toward the Red Sea, landlocked. They are in the middle between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's armies. Right in the middle. Nowhere to go. Death in their mind is certain and inevitable. They are either going to drown or they're going to be slaughtered. But what came next No one, not even Moses, could have known what was going to happen. But this is how God works. See, they thought that God was punishing them. And that he was punishing them, and this is why he's going to let them die out here in this, at the Red Sea by the armies of Pharaoh. But this is what we always do. We always think that when we are undergoing trials, tribulations, we think it's because we're being punished. It is not because we're being punished. It is because we are being prepared. And let this be a lesson to all of you. When you are going through difficult times, loss of job, there's loss of life in your family, there's loss of hope, there's eviction notices, there is people threatening to take your house, threatening to take your car. There are people that are telling lies on you to other people, loss of friendships, loss of all sorts, loss of health, loss of limbs, loss of whatever. There are so many things that we go through. You have to stop taking this position that God is trying to punish you. He is not trying to punish you. He is trying to prepare you. Prepare you for what's next. Faith in God is being able to see God on the other side of what's impossible. Faith in God is seeing God on the other side of what's impossible. You have to start thinking different. You don't get brownie points for thinking that doubting and fearing is an expression of humility. It is not. Doubting and fearing is evidence of small faith. Teeny weeny small faith. God wants people to not doubt. No matter how much or how bad or how long something seems like it is going to be, you have to continue to believe that I'm not going to worry. My God will rescue me from this too. Try to put yourself in the mind of Moses at the Red Sea. Moses. And what made it so bad for Moses is that he never got to see the promised land because he smote the rock that one time. But they get to the Red Sea thinking that all was over, complaining and crying and moaning like little babies, children. What's next? I don't know what to do. It's the end of the world. I don't know what's going to happen. We got the ocean over here, and we got Pharaoh's 600 chariots coming after us. And they go to Moses, why have you brought us out here? We could have stayed back there. Now suddenly slavery is appealing. J girl, I love that. Here they are at the Red Sea, complaining and murmuring, and like my sister J girl says, but God. He told Moses to lift up his staff. I don't think Moses knew what was going to happen. I don't think Moses surmised that the Red Sea was going to open up. I don't believe that. I don't believe the Ten Commandments, that movie. I don't believe that Moses, that he thought that when, he lifted up his staff, that the Red Sea was going to open. He just obeyed God. And even to him, it might have seemed weird. To his people, it might have seemed weird. They might have been, Moses, what are you doing? What are you doing with that stick? What are you doing? What do you think? What is that going to do? Pharaoh's army is coming and you are holding up your staff to the sky. And lo and behold, he raises his staff and the Red Sea begins to part. Just splits open. And there's two walls of water, of sea. And how high it is, I can't imagine. I can't imagine how high the walls of water. Imagine walking through the ocean or the sea with walls of water on both sides so high that you can't see the sky except for what's right directly above you. And it opens up. And he tells the people to go through. Go through. Walk through. But here's the kicker. And there are so many kickers here. But they went through on dry land. They went through on dry land. Look, here's what you have to understand. The water, the ground that they walked on was dry. It wasn't mud. It was dry. They were walking on dry sand. Like when you go to the beach, dry sand. There was no moisture at all. No moisture. None. They walk through. They get to the other side. Now, could you imagine that walk? You're walking there, you're looking up at these walls of water, and you're thinking that what is happening here? What is happening here? I'm sure many people thought, I'm not going to walk through here. This is not miraculous. This is some kind of a natural phenomenon. This is what people in the world today do. Whenever God does something, we think it's a natural phenomenon. Who controls nature? God is the God of nature. Come on, you guys. Listen to what I'm trying to listen. They walk through this water and they walk between these walls of sea on dry ground. And then by the time Pharaoh's army shows up on their chariots, because remember, they had the cloud, the Israelites had the cloud behind them, blocking Pharaoh's army. Israelites walk through on dry ground. And the minute the last person takes foot out of that water, out of that seabed on the other side, then the Pharaoh's army comes running through. Now you have to understand, it is not just about understanding how this must have looked to Israel, God's people, when they were walking through the parted sea. But you have to also think, how did Pharaoh and his army look at it? Because they no doubt they didn't see Moses raise his staff. They didn't see that. They didn't hear the Israelites complaining to Moses about where they're going to go next. But they did witness Moses lifting his staff up and the water parting. But the Pharaoh's army, Pharaoh didn't see that. All they saw was that the water was split and that the Israelites had gone through. That's the only way they could have gone. So they think, no doubt, that this was an unusual natural phenomenon. And so they were stupid enough to follow in after. And we know what happens next. all 600 of Pharaoh's chariots, all 600, rode into that dry ground between those two walls of the Red Sea. And when they were all in the depth of that floor, the suspended natural order of the Red Sea had been taken out of the way. And the sea collapsed upon them, wiped them all out. What was the point? The Israelites did not avoid tribulation. God saved them through it. He saved them through it. He took them through it. In John, sorry, I put my hand on my phone because I'm covering up my notes here. In John chapter 16, verse 33, Jesus says this: "These things I have spoken to you, that you might have peace." He says, "In the world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." Now notice this. He says, "These things I have spoken to you that you might have peace." And he says, "In the world you shall have tribulation. Be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." Now think about that for a second. In the world you shall have tribulation. And yet we have Christians that are telling people, no. There's a 7-year tribulation coming that Christ is going to come back and take you out of the world so that you don't have to go through it. That's another group of Christians that are going to go through it. And I take that back. Not Christians, only Jewish people. And that these Jewish people are, quote unquote, the 144,000 of Revelation. All of that is not true. None of that's true. But Jesus made it clear, in the world you shall have tribulation. There's no avoiding it. There's no getting around it. You're going to go through it, and the Lord is going to take you through it. And he tells you that since you're going to have trials and trouble in the world, but he tells you this. This is what he says. He says, "But be of good cheer." Wait a minute, let me get this straight. You're going to have tribulation, but I want you to be of good cheer because I have overcome the world. He didn't say anything about what you have to go through. He says, listen, you're going to have tribulation, so that you're going to have. He goes, the tribulation belongs to you, but I want you to be of good cheer in spite of it. When you have tribulation, be of good cheer. Why? He says, because he has overcome the world. He said nothing to do about because you. He says, be of good cheer because I have overcome the world. And if you are in me, you are an overcomer as well. So what does tribulation matter? Christians are always, so many of us are always fearful about these trials that we call tribulation in this life. And I'm not trying to belittle or demean your tribulation. We all have it. I'm going through things right now that you might never know I'm going through based on how I'm speaking to you. But I'm not worried. And I am of good cheer. And you know why? Because my Lord has overcome already. I belong to him. And anything that happens to me that shouldn't happen to me affects him. I can't deal with it. Only he can deal with it. And he tells me that when you have it, he doesn't say like, oh, it's okay to, he says, be of good cheer. When you have trials and tribulation in this world, Jesus is saying, when you are going through this, be of good cheer. Why? Because he has overcome. This is why. Because he has overcome. He has overcome the world, so you should be of good cheer. He tells us. I'm sorry here. I got my notes covered up here. Let me move my phone a little bit. Listen. He says here, Romans 8:35, who will separate us from the love of Christ? Who can separate us from the love of Christ? And the first thing he says is, almost as if he's anticipating these things that people are going to be saying. And he says, shall tribulation.